that time again. It's BadAzz Fantasy Baseball Podcast. Hey, all you badasses out there. Hope you're all having a good week in fantasy. This first full week of competition in fantasy baseball. My name is Rudy, and I'm coming to you live right now on YouTube from Alvin, Texas, hometown of Nolan Ryan and Nathan Evaldi. Hope you're doing well in your leagues this week. Keep in mind we have like 22 weeks in most standard leagues to go, so you got a long way to go. And if you got your ass kicked this week, like I pretty much did, then don't lose hope, because there's many things throughout the season you can do to improve your team. So don't throw in the towel after week one. Say to hell with it. But keep in mind that BadAzz Fantasy Baseball is the Viagra of fantasy baseball. Provides more fun, experience, and produces a better performance. So if you check in, I'm convinced that you will be convinced that you'll be a better player for it. And I hope we have a good time talking about our fantasy successes or non-successes, because, hey, we learn from both of them. So, you know, you can get something out. It ain't no damn fun losing, but if you can learn something out of it and, get on track and be better for it, down the road. I think one of the things, too, to keep in mind early in the season, while don't get me wrong about the idea of – nope, hold on. I got some double sounds coming through here. But the idea behind just don't lose hope, because it's a long season, but you don't want to get so damn far behind that you got to really play catch up. I've been in both those situations. Sometimes it's a difference in a particular situation from league to league, and it's very individual. But in a sense, you can get behind early in the season and make it very difficult to make your playoffs. So get busy and roll your sleeves up, and we're going to have a good live session today and talk about some things that are going to help you become a badass. Yeah, you. I got to tell you, the one thing I don't want you to okay, we can sit here and study and put some effort into fantasy baseball this season and see results and be a better team, but there are no guarantees. But it beats, I think, sometimes the alternative of taking something like this and using this to answer your damn questions. It's like, okay, should I drop Josh Donaldson, third baseman for the Yankees? I'm looking, and my 8 ball is saying, I can't even see it. Jesus Christ. As I see it, yes. Well, that was a pretty good suggestion. Although he was hitting pretty good before he went on to the IL, but anyway. So pick the damn way you want to do it. But I don't like to throw darts. I know people have done it and had some success, but long term, I mean, come on. You can take risk and chances, but if you're just kind of guessing through this game, it's tough to compete. As always, I want to throw out my a big hello to and thanks to my analytics department. I've been listening in on some CBS fantasy baseball today, but I've got to catch up on some of the other ones. I did listen to another one called Just Fantasy Baseball, and I thought that was pretty damn good. A couple guys on there, and I enjoyed listening to them this week. So I'll change it up and give you some feedback on some of these podcasts that I listen to and get good information for my analytics department. And if you don't remember what we're talking about, then we were talking about, let me go to that screen. For those of you listening on audio on this, I'm just clicking on an organizational chart that I've shown in past episodes, but I also, hold on, excuse me. I'll have that, shit, that was a hell of a sneeze. Excuse me. I'll have this organizational chart, as I call it, posted on the website. I think it is there, but if it's not posted, I'll get it up on there. So those of you listening on audio can go back and maybe look at it sometime if you're interested in seeing a visual. But I won't go over it every time, but there you can see it for those that are looking on the live stream. And hey, if you're on the live stream right now and you've said, hey, there's Rudy out there, then give me a big hello out there, and I'll give you a hello back. Tell you that. There's a big hello right there, you badasses. So get on the live stream and shoot me a question anytime during the show. If you have a question about what we're talking about, certainly, put your comments, questions, whatever, to engage in the conversation, and I'll include you in the podcast. Okay, so there's the org chart. We're going to get off of that right now. And we are going to go back to my badass face. Oh, shit. Okay, let me move this around here for a second. Let me get right here. What the hell? Okay. Now we're right. Okay. We really don't. Again, I want to also thank you for following the show. Without you guys out there listening and coming in on the live stream or catching those videos, audio or video versions, and downloading them or whatever to listen to them later, that's great. And I thank you very much. If you guys have time and you go out there and I think it's more important that you just follow the show. I think that's more important than asking for likes and hits and whatever else you do out there in the social media world. If you just follow me and just kind of so you can get notifications when I do go live stream, or just so you can engage and be engaged in the show weekly and involved and not miss some of those special editions that may come and go throughout the week as well. So I encourage you to do that and follow my show, and I certainly appreciate that. We got the only important date I got coming up right now. Well, there's a couple. One is we'll have another live stream next Sunday at 7 p.m. Central Time. And the only other one is the next game schedules, which, I mean, we're following up or finishing up the last game of week 1 competition. We got San Diego Padres at the Atlanta Braves. And that's currently running right now, that game. And I'm not going to spoil it or anything for anybody who's on the live feed or may join it and not want to know what's going on with the game. But once that game's done, it'll conclude, put the first week in the books. And then the whole fucking fantasy baseball world can start. 3, 2, 1, overreact. Yep. And this is something early to talk about, is after week 1's over, or during even week 1, I've seen this. Is it time to overreact, or is it time to act? And really, that sounds easy maybe for some to just quickly answer. And we shouldn't overreact, but we should act. I will say that's a fine line. It's like a teeter-totter or a level. You're just like right there in the middle on some of your players. But as I said earlier, it's a long season, and I'm not opposed to making moves early in the season when those situations dictate, make those moves. Obviously, i.e., player on roster gets hurt. Situation of player status on his team has changed. Hey, that's something, something that status has drastically changed that poses a question to you of whether to act now. And if you act now, is that, or will that be looked back on as overreaction time? I can tell you there are examples like that where this year, for instance, maybe a player is on the active roster the first week, i.e. Grayson Rodriguez. Then he gets sent to the minor leagues for the Baltimore Orioles. And then I think it was Kyle Bradish that got hurt, and then they called Grayson Rodriguez back. And he pitched a pretty good game. I mean, he had a rocky start in the first game. But that's a really good example of you would not want to overreact. I mean, to me, that would be an overreaction if you drop them. But I will say I understand that sometimes when players are playing, even early in the season, you see a player didn't even make the roster, the team roster, and you think, well, if he didn't even make the team roster, how can he be a benefit to me on my fantasy baseball roster? That's a good question. But if you're patient, he's eventually going to come back around. It depends how long you want to tie up a roster spot with a guy in the minors who essentially is doing you zero good for however many days and weeks that situation exists. So keep in mind overreactions and act. Yes, you should act when there's time. I've made moves in the first week, certainly to do with starting pitching. I don't have to tell you that pitching is thin right now, but there's reasons for that, and there's no. I think there's questions to ask about that too, and I'd be interested to hear you folks out there that are listening on the live stream, watching on live stream. Hey, what's happening? Peace. Send a comment about the things we're talking about right now, and we'll send it back and forth. Again, pitching's thin, and you got to ask. I mean, our teams, are the MLB teams, are they out there over managing pitchers, or are these pitchers just, a lot of them, a bunch of pussies? I just don't know which one it is, because maybe it's a combination of both. I don't really think these pitchers are pussies. I think if they have good leadership and, strong, good leadership, I think they probably would react different. But if you played fantasy football over the year, fantasy baseball over the years, I think you'll notice this. So folks that are out there new to fantasy baseball may not see this. It may just become the norm to you. But there once was a time where pitchers and batters, players just in general, were not on the IL this much. I mean, averaging, I don't know what the MLB average for games played was last year, but I know that number is going down. I mean, long term, it's on a gradual decline of the number of games that players are playing. And you got to ask yourself, what the hell's going on, because it does introduce a tremendous, an additional, I would say, challenge to a fantasy baseball manager out there. I mean, again, quality starts are hard to find. That's why wins are hard to get in fantasy baseball in your standard leagues, where wins are one of your categories. In your 5x5 category or more categories, you usually have wins still in there. So it's hard to have a quality start if your team philosophy is a couple times through the rotation and you're still in the fourth inning and they pull you, So there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on, and I think what it is a challenge to you as a fantasy manager to really watch for pitchers, relief pitchers, and starting pitchers from this time on, from the first week on, and pay attention to who is maybe outperforming their preseason ranks, because then they weren't really on the radar. So then, you have to answer. And we'll talk about that, who's performing at least. I know it's a small sample, but it's also, this is a week-to-week proposition playing fantasy baseball. And week 1 is one of those weeks. You should always strive to win every category that you can win each week. So looking at who top performers are can give you some indicators, too, of some potential, if nothing else, early season breakouts. And there is a difference. I mean, invariably each year somebody comes out of the gate. Some of these guys come out of the gate early and really good and hot, and then fizzle, and you never hear from them again. I always go back to a guy that played for the Houston Astros. His name was Tyler White, and he was a third baseman. I know I think he was on the team from, 2016, 17, 18, somewhere through there, 19. One of those seasons, he just started the season, and he wasn't projected as some top prospect or anything, but he was playing and starting for the Astros, and he had such a great first start of the season. I mean, one week he was player of the week, and you'd just think, the fantasy world would think, this guy's going to win me a championship. And then literally, I think in maybe May, or it probably was, I think June, he just fell off the face of the earth. I mean, I think he went to the minors or something, and he was flirting with the Mendoza line, so I don't know. I think they should change the Mendoza line now to, we got to find somebody else to name the line. How about, give me some suggestions on how we can change, because I don't know, the Mendoza guy, I mean, that's an old story. We've got plenty of candidates for the new Mendoza line name. So hit me up with a, I was thinking Jorge Soler maybe, but he's actually off to a hot start, so it kind of don't make sense now, but give him a couple months. Anyway, so pitching is thin. It's going to, at least early, until some people start coming from the waiver wire and start performing, at a high level. People starting pitchers that become eligible. They're either coming off IL, they're coming from the minor leagues, they're coming in trades, what have you. Team changes based on roster, what have you. And you really need to look for those as we go during the season now. To be aware of who those folks are and be able to pick them up. And I'll talk a little more specifically about some of that stuff here in a minute. I did want to get to a section, one of my new segments, I would say. It's not new. We've already had it once before, but I want to bring up what are we bringing up? The shit, or let me read. This segment is shit or the shit. And I'm going to put for you, those of you on audio, you'll just have to listen to the audio part of this segment, and then we're going to talk about some of these people that show up on the video portion. You can see the names, but don't fear, the audio portion, folks out there, will cover these name by name as soon as this is over. So without further ado, we're going to do this segment, shit or the shit.
Shit or the shit. Shit or the shit. Fantasy baseball on a 6-month trip. Stack and pack wood bats and racks for another championship. Picking studs, stopping duds. Picking studs, stopping duds. Picking studs, stopping duds. Picking studs, stopping duds. It's where champions are made.
All right, folks. I hope you enjoyed that. Did you hear that echo? That's because I got this all fucked up. I should say all fucked up. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that segment. Let's break it down a little bit what we're talking about. Shit or the shit. It's basically, no offense, but if these players that make are shit, that means they're not playing good right now. Now, it's early. I get that. But why we're going to address this week after week, even from week one, is we're not going to become concerned on people that are on the shit side for a minute. I mean, we don't want to overreact. So anything that we talk about right now is far too early in the season. If there is a reason to pull a trigger on something, then I'll mention that right now. But I don't think we're there yet. There's an old saying. It says one by chance, two by coincidence, three is a pattern. Let's get to three. I mean, let's see on pitchers a lot of times. Maybe they get that. The first two starts they have of the season didn't go good and may have been even really bad. There are a lot of examples of that in the first week of fantasy baseball competition. I assure you, a lot of good fantasy baseball managers out there have some shitty-ass ERAs and whip because of some of the shitty performances we had. But anyway, we need to look at them and look at that, especially when we pop up and we see people on our roster that make any of these top lists, if it's on the shit side. These are the guys that we're glad to have right now. They're performing. And let's talk about some of these folks. First of all, those of you who are watching this on YouTube have seen some of the names that were posted, and we'll talk about those real quick for everybody out there with that are on the audio feed as well. The number one overall player, and this was as of Saturday, the end of Saturday's competition. So if there was any drastic performances on Sunday, at the time of this podcast, then it would not be reflected on these. But I don't feel like it moved that much because it considered the whole week. So this is just minus today's performance. But number one in fantasy baseball right now from the batter side, and really, all sides, is a Pittsburgh Pirate outfielder, disgruntled as fuck, wanting to get the fuck out of there, Brian Reynolds. So he's decided to play like fucking King Kong after he told the Pirates, fuck y'all, your team sucks. I'm a good player. Send me somewhere where I can make some cash, wear some fucking gold, and get a goddamn ring. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, he said it before the season started. He tried to get out of there. But look, Brian Reynolds is rocking and rolling. You cats out there that drafted him should be jumping up and down because I know it's early, but he looks fantastic. He looks like a guy that's headed for the All-Star game. I mean, he looks like a guy that's going to fit one of those types that I talked about in our BadAzz sessions earlier this year was other factors in trying to determine or project some breakouts or people that'll have good years, what have you. I would think, Brian Reynolds certainly was on my list. He wasn't on my target list, but because, I just don't want too many players on a shitty team like Pittsburgh. But Brian Reynolds has really risen above, and I would think he's charging forward and going to have a really good first half because it's in his best interest to do so and make that all-star team actually maybe get voted in. His preseason rank was 87. He's performing at 1, so that's a pretty good. If you really want to root for an underdog right now, I would think that you had picked up a couple of these guys, these two guys on the waiver wire, and in some instances, they may have been drafted in the very late rounds, but super performance out of the gate by Brian Anderson with Milwaukee. I mean, he got a new home going from the Marlins to Milwaukee. Translates into a much more favorable venue to be launching balls from. And I would say probably a much better lineup, pretty clearly. And so those factors. I think one of the negatives I always go into is when a guy goes to a new team, but I think he's on a 1-year contract. Usually, in my opinion, the first year when people sign a contract and move to a new team, I weigh that a little on the negative side. It's not a killer, a draft killer, but I'm just saying it does make a difference and affects somewhat negatively on my preseason ranks. But Brian Anderson came in at a whopping preseason rank of 1746. I think that's when the fucking British came over and demanded some more taxes from the fucking Pilgrims. You know, that's how long. I mean, that's how long it's been since somebody's had that much of a difference. But anyway, Brian Anderson's certainly just performing incredibly well at this point. If you picked him up on the waiver wire or some reason drafted him in the last round or two, well, then kudos to you. And you're reaping certainly the benefits this week. Gleyber Torres made the list at number 3. He's hotter than a $2 pistol, and he came in at 103 preseason rank. Number 4, Adam, and these aren't surprises. All you got to do is turn on TV and watch Quick Pitch or ESPN or any of the MLB Network, any of the highlights from the games, or if you've watched the games, you know these guys are hot. Adam Duvall at number 4. He was preseason ranked at 304 and was a heavy target, late target on my tiers list. But I didn't get him in. I didn't select him in any of the 3 teams, the Yahoo teams that I drafted in, because I had already drafted a full roster before I got down to Adam Duvall, and I felt like I had a good draft. But of course, looking back, you'd love to have. It looks like he's a really good fit at Fenway Park in Boston. I think Duvall obviously has 40 home run potential. He's done it. So, you know, it could be it could be a breakout season. And I think he's on a 1-year contract. I'm not sure, and I'm sorry I even said I think, because I should be able to tell you, but I believe he's on a 1-year contract. Number 5 overall batter in fantasy baseball in Yahoo, according to Yahoo right now, is Ronald Acuna Jr., who preseason ranked in Yahoo at number 1. So he's performing as drafted. So if you drafted, obviously you went in the first round, and if you have him, you're really happy with Ronald Acuna coming out of the gate. He's running, he's hitting the ball with more power. His exit velocity is up, and I just think everybody's been predicting it, that the power, that they think the power is going to come back this year and full, and if it does, then he will be up there in this position for many weeks as we go on with the podcast. So also on the list, number 6 is Jorge Mateo from Baltimore Orioles. A pretty big surprise there. Shortstop, base stealer extraordinaire last year. I mean, I think it was him and John Birdie down the line fighting it out for the most stolen bases. And certainly I think it was expected that coming into the year that Mateo was going to steal a lot of bases. However, one of the things that really hurts in categories, or was in the past with Mateo, was his batting average. It was just low. His batting position in the lineup was either 8th or 9th, or almost always, down in that bottom third of the lineup. So, but he's obviously off to a hot start. So these hot starts are the makings of breakouts sometimes. So, I mean, that's leaning that way. Number 7, Will Smith. He's a preseason 83rd rank. Somebody you'll know is hot also, Matt Olson of Atlanta, number 8. He was a 39th preseason rank. Wander Franco, hotter than hell. He was 86 preseason rank. And James Outman, number 10, rookie from the LA Dodgers. If he is still out there on your waiver wire list, I would go get him. I drafted him actually in one of my 3 teams, so I'm pretty happy with that. Sometimes you get lucky with those young guys, and they come out of the chute playing well, and some don't. I mean, obviously the verdict is out on Anthony Volpe, but we'll talk about some of that shortly. But James Outman is certainly a fast starter, if nothing else. His preseason rank was 2,062, and he is at number 10 right now. All right. The shit as it relates to pitching, I'm going to say that there are, I think there is one, maybe 2 surprise. No, I'm going to say 1 surprise. And really the rest of them, you might think 2. But anyway, we'll go down the list. Okay, the pitchers that are the shit right now. Number 1, the shit. New York Yankees, starting pitcher, Garrett Cole. His preseason rank was 16. He is at number 1 as far as pitchers. Now, of course, that's not overall. I think he's somewhere near that 16, but he's a top pitcher right now on Yahoo performance-wise. Number 2 coming in is relief pitcher for the Toronto Blue Jays, Jordan Romano. Now, he was preseason pick 48, and we know in some instances he went even higher than that, like as high as the 3rd round in many drafts. But he is performing at an extremely high level at this time, and you would be happy to have picked him in the 3rd round, at least right now. Number 3, Luis Castillo. He came in at a preseason rank of 57 and drafted typically mostly in the 5th round. And that's where I had him targeted, and I got him in 2 of the 3 Yahoo leagues that I drafted in. The only other round, and I talked about this in another show, I didn't get him because he was my SP1 primary target to be my number 1 starter this year. The only reason I didn't get him in all 3 leagues is that one league I didn't get him in, they went up to the 4th round and drafted him. So I didn't see that coming. But I'm glad I got him in two leagues, and Luis Castillo has just been knocking them down. Number 4, this is going to be your surprise. From the Chicago Cubs, Marcus Stroman. I know you didn't see that coming. But yes, he was preseason ranked 249th overall in fantasy. That's batters and pitchers. He is the number 4 pitcher of all pitchers in Yahoo. So Stroman off to a great start. I don't know if the WBC thing, who knows? Maybe that helped him get warmed up to where he could have a fast start. I have no idea. But we'll monitor that and see how maybe because I don't see any other WBC. Well, I do, actually. So we're coming up here. Another surprise you'll see. But Marcus Stroman, number 4. Number 5, a guy that I targeted in my leagues to be a number 2 or 3 starter, maybe even a 4 starter. But Jeffrey Springs of the Tampa Bay Rays was a preseason 134 rank, and he's performing at number 5 right now. So big shout out to my analytics department with those Fantasy Pros podcast and CBS Fantasy Baseball Today and all the other ones that I've listened to in the past and currently for highlighting Jeffrey Springs, his We knew he finished strong last year, but to bring it out in the spring and bring out real statistics and information about how Springs was doing in the spring made it a lot easier for me to bump him up and prioritize him in the draft and get him in a couple of my teams out of the 3 as well. So Jeffrey Springs out there kicking ass. Number 6, Pablo Lopez. New team. Boy, I didn't have him on my target list. But anyway, he came in at 171 preseason. He's killing it. Here's another WBC. So we have Stroman and Lopez. He pitched in the WBC. And this guy, number 7, Kyle Freeland of the Colorado Rockies. His preseason rank was 1935. And it seems like it's been since the year 1935 that a Rockies pitcher was in the top 10 of anything, unless it was something bad. But Kyle Freeland has been that guy, that Colorado Rocky Mountain High unicorn that has somehow survived that place. You got to give some credit to Kyle Freeland. I mean, seriously. He's a damn good pitcher. Been in Colorado, I don't know how many years, but he's really talk about, there has to be the right kind of pitcher, I think, maybe to be successful pitching for the Rockies, but he's really pulled it off, and you can't really find a lot of them in their past that can say that. So I just had to say kudos to him. And he's off to a hell of a start, number 7 pitcher in Yahoo right now. So number 8 is Julio Urias, came in preseason at 49 for the LA Dodgers, off to a fast start. Here's someone I'm glad I did not highly target because he would have been an SP1 target, and that's Dylan Cease, and I wanted Luis Castillo. So I didn't, although I liked him and had Dylan Cease on my target list, he was more of a secondary target to me if I didn't get Luis Castillo. So, and of course, Dylan Cease was plucked up early, in many cases earlier than Luis Castillo. But Dylan Cease got out of the gate, and I remember a lot of these analytic departments were calling for him to bust. And I know it's only a week, but he sure didn't look like a bust this week. But so people who've drafted these guys that I just went over, kudos to you guys getting out of the gate with some really good draft picks and some really good a really good start. And if you had any of those guys, you're probably having a really good week, especially if you have a couple of those folks. So if you got some now here's the other end of the spectrum. Now we're going to talk about the shit. And I don't mean it to be disrespectful, but we got to put these people on a target. When they're shitty, we got to say they're shitty. Number 1 on the shit pile list is Jazz Chisholm. Now, I know he had a good game today on Sunday. He had a good game today. But before today, he was a preseason 35th rated fantasy player. He is performing at the rank of 557. So he's got a long way to go. I'm sure he moved up some rankings today, but it's going to take a while for him to get in a respectable range. So those who drafted Jazz Chisholm better hope his back doesn't get hurt, or crop up like last year. I know he had that back issue. So that's why I stayed away from him. And, so far, I would not doubt he could be one of these busts that go on and off the IL all year. That'd be unfortunate, but hey, it happens. Number 2, one of the biggest shitbags in all of Major League Baseball. A guy that I can't stand, but I love to see it when he's on something like the shit side of the shit list. And that's Carlos fucking narcissist Correa. Fuck him. He came in at preseason 109. He's performing at 655. What a fuck stick. And I'll tell you, I'm not going to get into it on this podcast, but, I live 30 miles south of Houston, and I just think he's a shit bag. He's a cheater. Every time I see his name, I disregard anything he performs or does, because I can't believe he's making money still in the major leagues. A game that he cheated. So, anyway. So, fuck him. I hope he's on this shitty side of the list all season long. No offense if you drafted him, but he sucks. And honestly, if you drafted him and still believe he's good, you suck too. But number 3, shitty on the shitty side, the dirty side of the hurricane. That'd be Anthony Santander of the Baltimore Orioles. He 115 preseason, performing at 673. We'll go down the list. Here's another fuck stick. Christian Walker, preseason 138. He's playing at 572 rank right now. His ranking in this is all based on Yahoo Standard Leagues rankings. So you got Christian Walker, who had this fucking great year last year. And guess what happened? Sucked some of these people right back in, these fancy managers. Oh, he's not the Christian Walker of, what was it, 2019, 2020, 2021. I think he had 2 or 3 years there where he was nothing. Mendoza line candidate. And far short on power numbers that you would expect from a big guy like that or whatever. But, he's a shit. He might stay on this list, too. He may be another one than bust. But I saw that coming because I knew what he was like the year before. So some baseball players just have those peak years out of the blue. But don't expect Christian Walker to be playing at 2022 level this year. Here's another guy that went rock bottom, or I thought rock bottom last year, and that's Javi Baez. He comes in at number 5 as the shittiest player in fantasy baseball. Now, I want to preface this. You had to be in the top 200 preseason rank to make this list. So these are people who were ranked 200 or higher and are at near bottom of the entire fantasy rankings at this time. Just keep in mind that when you're in a 12-team standard league with 23 roster slots, that's 276 players total. So when you're talking about players performing in the ranks of 600s, 500s, keep in mind 276 roster slots exist in the standard league. So they're not anywhere near that, performing, just to put that in perspective of how low they really are. William Contreras, who moved from the Atlanta Braves to the Milwaukee Brewers, and I know a lot of people drafted him at or above the 162 preseason rank because they felt like the move, he was getting out from under Travis d'Arnaud, and B, he was going to Milwaukee, which was a better park to hit in than Truist Park in Atlanta. And that hasn't worked yet. So he's playing at 567 on the fantasy ranking chart. Jeff McNeil, WBC player. Well, so was Javi. Well, was Javi Baez? Yeah. Santander was. Correa wasn't. But McNeil was, and was preseason 163, playing at 583rd rated player. Josh Bell, 170 preseason. He's playing at 558 now. Ketel Marte on the list. Brandon Drury on the list. So these are all the top 10 that are playing really, if they were 200 or better ranking preseason and are playing in the 500, 600, 700 ranking area. Now we go to pitchers. These are some shitty pitchers right now. And I know you've heard this if you've been paying attention, watching, listening out there in the podcast, and hopefully you don't have him on your roster because it probably means you spent a first or second round on maybe a third, but certainly maybe a second. Corbin Burns, Milwaukee. Another pissed off player, i.e. So two extremes here. Brian Reynolds over at Pittsburgh, outfielder, says, fuck you all, Pittsburgh. I want traded. I want out of this shitty-ass town. The stadium's beautiful, but the team sucks. And he's playing as the number one player in fantasy baseball right now. Corbin Burns says, fuck, I can't believe y'all ain't going to extend me. Fuck you all. So he's playing at 794th ranking in fantasy, the fantasy ranking on performance thus far. And he's was the number 11 overall rated player in fantasy baseball preseason. Another guy off to a terrible start, Aaron Nola. He's playing at 766, and he came in preseason at 23. Ouch. Zach Gallen, another one playing in the 700s. Blake Snell playing in the 700s. Lance Lynn, Lucas Giolito coming in at 7. Chris Sale, 8. Chris Bassett, 9. Edward Cabrera, and 10, Miles Michaelis. These guys are shitting it up right now. They're shitting their pants and stinking up the place. So we'll watch these and see how things go. I mean, things change. It's early in the season. 1 week does not make a season. So, but sometimes these are indicators, again, as the weeks go, and many of these names will drop off. New ones will come on, but some may remain. And when they remain for a while, that's when you start saying, this looks like the makings of a bust season for that player. So more to follow on that. I wanted to talk about to you folks out there too, something that came up this week with the first week was 8 games of 8 teams had postponements, and how that affected your fantasy baseball competition in the first week. If you're in a standard 12x12, 5x5 categories league, whatever, you're in a standard, basically a standard league, you will have experienced maybe a loss of a significant loss of games, and then in turn everything that comes with that, innings pitched, at bats. You lose out on those when these postponements happen, because they rarely, if ever, reschedule a postponed game in the same fantasy baseball week. So you essentially lose that. You'll pick up that game in like September, but right now you'd really like to have those. So if that affected your teams this week, don't fret over that, because that's something out of our control. I can absolutely tell you that it affected, as of yesterday, Saturday, the 8th of April, because my players total were given up. I gave up 8 games, 8 teams. It's not 8 games, 16 teams. It's 8 teams that lost games for postponement this week. How that affected me as of Saturday evening, in 2 of my 3 leagues that I'm playing in Yahoo, I was giving up my opponent at bats were 351 to my 296. That's 55 more at bats my opponents got. And in the other league, it was 333 at bats to 302 for 31 more at bats. Any way you slice it, 30, 50, what have you. That's tough to overcome when I've said, as I said in our BadAzz sessions, the learning sessions, The margins between winning and losing in fantasy baseball are very small. When you have something as much as 8 games that your players are not being able to play in, and you're giving up 50 at bats in a week, you are going to lose most of those hitting categories. It may not affect you the same as on the pitching side, but those counting stats, what we call them counting stats, they will shrink typically due to less at bats. So if you were affected by this week, that's a shitty way to start the year off, by being affected like in that way and get way behind. And then by the time you start to play equal amount of games, you've already gotten behind, and it's a tough row to hoe. I'm going to show you, though. I'm going to go, for those who are watching on the live stream or will catch us on video, I'm going to change the screen here, and I'm going to go to Yahoo Fantasy here. Let me close this out real quick. Folks on the audio, I'm going to explain to you. We're going to go on to the Yahoo Fantasy site, and what we're going to do is, when you go to the Yahoo Fantasy site, as I always do, go to that black header above that says Yahoo Fantasy, says Baseball 23, League, My Team, yada, yada, yada. So if you go across that header, let me think here. Okay. You're going to go to... Hold on. Okay. So I will go... Man, I'm on the... Is this the right? Let's see. Nope. Okay. I'm trying to pull this up and make sure before I tell you that it's the actual right one. And that's not the right one. Okay. So what I'll do is, and this is the Yahoo Fantasy page. I go to the header, and I'm going to go to matchups. I'm going to click on matchups, and it's going to pull up. For those of you who don't know how to do this, I'm going to explain it to you. And this is first week's matchup, and it was more than 7 days, as normal weeks will commence this coming week. Week 2 will be a regular Monday to Sunday week, I should say. So, looking over this, of course, I'm winning this league 7-3, and I can tell you, starting the day out, I think I was down 6-4. I was getting beat. So it just tells you how the margins are small between winning and losing, and they can change on a dime one way or the other at times. Okay, so when we're in let me see here. So we're in the window here. Okay. I'm trying to find that information here. Okay. Now I'm trying to locate, and for some reason, this is not coming up. So I'm trying to go and find where it shows the games remaining, or games played, and how many games are remaining in a fantasy baseball week that you're playing in. Now, this is where sometimes the app, the phone app of fantasy baseball, and the computer, the desktop or the computer version can be quite different on some of the navigation. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go cover this. I'm going to go to the phone and look at the app and go to matchups and see. Let me get on the same team here. That would be that one. Okay. So when I'm on matchups on my phone app, I can see that it shows right above the category scoring, it'll show games played. And so that you can tell through the week where you're at with respect to how many games you've got left to play and how many you've already played, and your opponent as well. Now, I ended up drawing the difference in at-bats a little closer. I think I ended up like 21 at-bats behind this particular opponent. So I was able to come back and squeak out a couple categories and turn the tide late in that competition. But that's something you can track as well. You can track how many days or how many games you got left, and how are they front loaded or back loaded weeks, and you can see that. So you can see that if you're getting outpaced early in the week, just know that later in the week, hope those games that you do start to accumulate and gain on your opponent, that you can mount a comeback. So just don't freak out early in the week if you get behind, because sometimes it's just a matter of they've played more games and got more at-bats on you. Okay, so let me go back to the webcam screen here for just a second. You folks on the audio, I'm putting my mug back on the screen here. There I am. Hello, everybody. Hey, you badasses out there. Okay, so we're going to move this. We're going to do this. Okay, so I think the postponements do have an effect, but in the end, it all ends up hashing out if you look at it in the overall season, and it works out. The next segment we're going to go into is we're going to do the segment on Velo Heroes. And what I told you when we introduced this last episode, we're trying to identify people who are hitting the ball very hard at the time, our top 10 people in that category. We're also looking at who is throwing the ball extremely hard. And then now also I want to look at, because of the new rules on that affect stolen bases, with the larger bases, the throws over to first base, the limitations. We are obviously experiencing early in the season, a 3 or 4-fold increase in stolen bases across the board. So I'm going to also put in the Velo Heroes segment, talk about some of the fastest players with respect to feet per second in the league. Some the top dogs won't surprise you, but we'll also talk about some fast dudes that you don't notice, or maybe didn't notice, that were maybe a little faster than you thought. So without further ado, you folks on the audio feed will have to, again, listen to it, and then we'll discuss our segment on Velo Heroes.
And he delivers the pitch. 100. And he's coming on the line. Here comes the pitch. 102. God damn, he's a Velo Hero. 105. And he's coming to bat in the bottom of the ninth. Here comes the pitch and a hit. Hero. Another Velo Hero. This motherfucker's on fire.
Hope you enjoyed that beautiful music production. And again, I'll remind you, my production team is 3 people, me, myself, and I. So we do the best we can with what we got, and we try to make it better each week. Let's talk about Velo heroes. Let's talk about the batters out of the gate that are top 10 in this category. This is something you guys can go look up on Baseball Savant. It's you can go just type that in, SAVANT or MLB statistics. That stuff will come up. You'll get to the Baseball Savant page, and you can pull up some of this very information and check it out yourself. See how your players are hitting the ball. So this is a statistic of barrels divided by plate appearances, and it gives a percentage of how much percent that you're barreling the ball when you're going to bat. How many percent? So leading the way is, surprise, surprise, Brian Reynolds is barreling up at a 31.3%, which is well above number 2. But he's just, no wonder. He's Superman right now. He's number 1 in fantasy baseball. He's hitting the ball harder than anybody, at least with respect to the statistic on barrels and plate appearances. Number 2, Matt Chapman of the Toronto Blue Jays. He's knocking the ball at a 27.3% barrel rate. Pretty high. Number 3, here's the Renaissance man, Joey Gallo of the Minnesota Twins. Oh, what a comeback. This guy, I don't know. I just really, I see him dropping off this, but anyway, we'll see. The Joey Gallo project continues. Number 4, Brian Anderson, come in at number 2 overall fantasy batter in all of fantasy baseball. He's also barreling the ball at 22.2%. Here's another name that you've heard, Adam Duvall, 21.4%. Number 6, guy coming out of nowhere, Luke Riley of the Tampa Bay Devil Rays, 18.8%. The next 2 are same, 18.8% barrel rate. Jorge Soler, coming out of the chutes good early this year. Wander Franco, another one hot. CJ Cron, 18.2%. And rounding out the top 10, Josh Donaldson, 17.6. And now he's injured. Fuck. Yeah. For those that had Donaldson last year, maybe even the year before that, he sucked it up. So to see him in the top 10% of any positive was a surprise, honestly. But yeah, there's Josh Donaldson kicking ass, and I think he's on the IL either yesterday or today. All right, let's talk about those speed demons. The fastest players, feet per second, in the major leagues right now, based on statistics of games through Saturday, April 8th. Number 1 is Bobby Witt Jr. Number 2, Corbin Carroll of the Arizona Diamondbacks. Number 3, Esteury Ruiz. And no, that's not Keibert Ruiz of the Washington Nationals. Although that'd be crazy, wouldn't it, if a catcher was number 3 on the fastest sprint speed. Number 4, O'Neal Cruz of the Pittsburgh Pirates. All 6'7" of him. Number 5, Ronald Acuna Jr., the Atlanta Braves. And number 6, Trey, I'm not Justin Turner. Number 7 is Jeremy Pena of the Houston Astros. And if you watch Jeremy Pena play, he does not look that super fast, honestly. But he's coming in at number 7 in the major leagues in fantasy baseball. Number 8 is J-Rod, Julio Rodriguez of Seattle, super fast. And then we have number 9, Victor Robles, fast center fielder, not much of a hitter. Number 10, finishing out the list, is Jordan I'm Not Christian Walker. Yeah, Jordan Walker, stud. Third base and outfield eligibility in Yahoo, and just hitting the ball hard. And to see his name in the top 10 of all speed demons in the MLB. And if you haven't seen Jordan Walker play, you need to turn the TV on and see how big this guy is. He's huge. You think when you look at Ronald Acuna and Julio Rodriguez, you think, man, them guys are big and they're fast, to be fast. But you got to take a look at Jordan Walker. I'm telling you, I've told people he's Jordan Alvarez on good knees, So we'll see, but he's off to a fast start, and it's kind of surprised me to see him on that list. But Jordan Walker, he's a badass. Now I'm going to talk about the top 10 of my list of some fast dudes you don't notice are fast. These are guys I plucked out of the top 100. This is the top 100 players, fastest players. Now, that doesn't mean they're super fast, but they're the fastest 100. And I would be willing to bet a lot of these guys that you would not have guessed would make this list. So if you want to spend a second, maybe pause this, and if you're listening to it on audio or video, and think about, who do I think might be on the list of some fast dudes that you don't notice. And you can pause right now. Okay, for those who paused, they're going off and thinking this out. They're going to brainstorm it and try to figure it out. And I'm going to tell you, number 1, Matt Chapman of the Toronto Blue Jays comes in at 29. 29th fastest speed on the bases thus far in the season. Now, he's boogieing. That means, man, he's hustling out. He's also hitting the ball well. I mean, he's got the combination of everything that could say breakout. And certainly this first week, he's just bloated out. Number 2, might surprise you, of some fast dude that you don't notice. Charlie fucking Blackmon, 38th in the major leagues in feet per second on the base pass. Isn't that crazy? Tell you another one, coming in at number 44 overall and number 3 on my list, Austin Riley. Yeah, you wouldn't expect him to be that high in sprint speed. Next, number 4, Adley Rutschman. Rutschman's coming in at number 48 overall in the major leagues. I wouldn't have guessed that. A lumbering catcher. I mean, to see a catcher at all in the top 50 of feet per second speed, that's something, because there ain't no other catcher in that category. Next at number 5 of some of the fast dudes you don't notice, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. coming in at 53rd overall in the major leagues. Number 6, Juan Soto at 55 overall, in according to Baseball Savant, a website that's where this data comes from. Number 7 on my list is Hunter Renfroe. He's 57th overall in speed, and to me, he definitely makes the top 10. I didn't see that coming. And I didn't see at number 8 Eugenio Suarez coming in. Now, he's 70th, but I thought that would be a stretch for him to even be in the top half of a 12-team standard league, 276-player rostered league, that he would come in at 70, in the top half. I just wouldn't guess that. Number 9, I have Pete Alonso, who broke the top 100 in speed at 86. And almost laughable at number 10 is Josh Bell. Looks like he can't run for shit, and he's the 96th fastest player in the league. So, hey, you never know these guys. The guys that are going to steal bases and stuff, a lot of them were in the top list of the fastest. But to say some of these guys that surprise you may also surprise you this year with some of the stolen base numbers you'd never would expect from somebody like Charlie Blackmon this year. But he's in a contract year, and I think, Matt Chapman I think is as well, maybe. But I know Charlie Blackmon is, so he's probably running his ass off for money. Now, I'm going to go back to the screen for those who are watching this on video on YouTube and I'm just going to cover this. Okay, this segment we're going to talk about prospects pretty much and how the preseason prospect ratings and how much percentage owned they are right now and how well they're performing, as far as prospects, they're up. This is their percentage, and this is the likelihood of their availability. Number one on the prospect list is the New York Mets catcher / DH Francisco Alvarez, who just got called up this past week. He was number one. He's a number one prospect according to MLB Pipeline. And he is currently owned in Yahoo Fantasy as of Saturday evening at 33% rostered. So I would say, based on him, Alvarez being a number one prospect and being called up, he should be rostered in most leagues at a higher percentage than 33%. I would expect that will go above 50% in the next week or two. But obviously it depends on his performance. But if he gets out of the gate early, he'll be up to 50 real quick, and he'll be at 70 in a couple weeks. But it just depends on how much playing time he gets, how much they use him as a DH, and how much they're actually going to let him catch, because they have an injured catcher there. Number two on the list is Grayson Rodriguez of the Baltimore Orioles. Now, he's the number two prospect in MLB Pipeline, and he too was called up this week after being sent down already this season. So this guy's already went through the first week of fantasy baseball, made the roster, went to the minors, and came back to welcome to starting pitching in 2023. But, yeah, he is owned in 73% of leagues. And if you, unless you have an elite pitching staff, I would think he would be a good starting pitcher 6 or 7 and pick him up, because the upside is significant. But, again, he's already owned in 73%. That number's probably went up somewhat. So be watching for him if he's available in your league and you have somebody that sucks ass down at the bottom of your starting pitcher, you may pick him up. Number 3, Ellie De La Cruz of the Cincinnati Reds. He's a shortstop / third baseman in Yahoo, and he is currently owned in only 13% of leagues. So he is at the minor league level, so we'll have to wait and see on a call up for him, and you'll see obviously those percentages go up. The number 11 prospect who is anticipated to be called up sometime this season, Yuri Perez. He's a Miami starting pitcher, and he's 7% owned at this time. And I would think that's probably even high because he's still in the minor leagues, but obviously people are speculating on him and willing to hold him into a active roster slot in the hopes that he'll get an early call-up. Number 5, Daniel Espino, and he's starting pitcher for the Cleveland Guardians. Shit. He is number 14 in the MLB pipeline of prospects, and he's owned only by 3% in Yahoo leagues. Number 6, Kyle Harrison, starting pitcher for the San Francisco Giants. And I can tell you these starting pitchers are going to get called up, a lot of them. With the way injuries and the ILs going, you're almost assured these top prospects, some of these guys, they're going to get called up pretty soon. Kyle Harrison will probably be one of them. San Francisco starting pitcher. He's only owned in 5% of the leagues, and he's ranked 16th in the pipeline. Taj Bradley, Tampa Bay starting pitcher. He's 18th in the MLB as far as prospects, and he is 4% owned. Number 8, a guy that gets a lot of publicity, a lot of news in the fantasy baseball podcast world is Brett Beatty, third base, New York Mets. He's 22% owned, and he's ranked 19th overall in the MLB pipeline prospect rankings. So there's been a lot of chatter about Brett Beatty, and, I think it all centers around what's Eduardo Escobar going to do. I mean, it seems like they gave him the job with him to, I guess, lose potentially. I'm not sure what the tolerance is on the Mets with respect to Escobar getting off to a slow start. And you got a guy, down there, down on the farm that could play possibly left field and get that bat in the lineup. So he could be a call-up pretty soon, and I'd be certainly looking for him. Now, putting him on a roster at this moment, I mean, I think that's a little bit of an overreaction personally, because we don't know when he's going to get called up, but we can sure watch him and see from the team what they're saying. And obviously, if there's an injury on one of these teams with a starting pitcher, then you really need to get your ears up and hear if they're going to reach down into the minors and pull one of these guys up. Number 9 is Bobby Miller. He's a starting pitcher of the LA Dodgers. He's only 4% owned, and he's a 22nd overall ranked player on MLB Pipeline. And last but not least, Sal Frelick of the Milwaukee Brewers, outfielder. He's currently playing in the AAA minor leagues. He is number 28 prospect, and he's 6% owned in Yahoo. So there you have it. Some people to put on your target list. You can even go in and put them on your watch list, even though they're not in the major leagues. I'm pretty sure almost most of these guys I know are on there, but there may be a couple of these guys that may not be showing up yet. But for the most part, you can basically type these guys, these prospects' names into the waiver list. When they pull up and they're not taken, they're not on any team, then just click them, that little star, and put them on your favorites list, so it's a little easier to pull them up and you don't forget about them. And if you see them move up in the transaction list, meaning more fantasy managers are starting to pick him up, then you need to find out what's going on, because it's probably a call-up coming. And you want to be on the forefront of that and get shots at some of these guys and see if they're going to actually stick with the roster, and then are they going to be fantasy relevant. Okay, that's all on prospects and call-ups at this time. We'll talk about that every week and talk about what you can be looking for ahead and play the long game. A segment we're going to start having next week I'm going to start covering it. It's called Inside the Dugout. And what we're going to do on that is I'm going to give you some assessment and analysis on different teams' culture, how I analyze it. The only basis I analyze it from is watching a game on TV. I mean, I don't have any other insight where I can call somebody and say, hey, what about that argument in the locker room last night? Or why is these guys not really high-fiving that dude when he hits a home run or whatever? I look for little signs of cultural issues. And it may not be necessarily issues. I may be seeing a real cultural boon on a team. And why I say that's important is I firmly believe that sports performance, like any other performance, is greatly enhanced when a team dynamic is together that is all pulling in the same direction. I just can't tell you. And I think for fantasy baseball, I think fantasy baseball players are going to perform at a higher level being in those positive, really look like they enjoy playing together, spending time together. They enjoy being teammates, and that makes a difference. So we'll be talking about some of those factors starting next week, and I'll look at a particular team and let you know what side of the dugout I believe they're on. So that brings us to our next segment that's about injuries, and it's called the Broke Dick Report. So for those on video, I'm going to go away from the webcam, the camera screen, and pull up the Broke Dick Report. Those on audio will have to listen to it, and then we'll come right back to it and briefly talk about it. Here's the Broke Dick Report.
Yeah. Put them all together, lame, lazy, and sick. In fantasy baseball, they're all broke dick. A broke dick. Broke dick. Discomfort, aches and pains, hamstring, lat, and oblique strains, forearm tendonitis, plantar fasciitis, just what the hell is bursitis? And you know the season's gone. And when you feel the sorry ass heads for Tom and John. Broke dick. Broke dick. Put them all together. Lame, lazy, and sick. In fantasy baseball, they're all broke dick. Broke dick.
Okay, folks, that was the Broke Dick Report, at least the intro musical portion of it. If you don't know what a broke dick is, it comes from my Army experience of when I was in the Army a long time, and when we had soldiers that would, what we call, take advantage of the sick call opportunity for people who are sick or injured to go on sick call in the morning, and by the way, miss physical training. Hint, hint. And they would just repeatedly, a soldier would repeatedly go on sick call. But, you know, I mean, we don't always know everything that's wrong or with someone or what they're being, but they get paperwork back and have to bring it back. And these guys would be like, they just were called broke dick after a while. That's the only thing we could come up with. So I'm going to call them broke dick. Now, that don't mean that these guys are, you know, I'm not down them or anything. I'm just trying to come up with a name that's appropriate. Number one, or the first person on the list, Josh Donaldson, obviously. He went on the IL. And after a really fast start, here we go again. You know, Josh Donaldson, this hurts, that hurts. I mean, he'll tough it out a lot of times, but boy, what a wash he has been with the New York Yankees. And I know they can't wait until that contract's up. Just Josh Donaldson's a very marginal player. I mean, he got out of the chutes fast this year, but he's been a marginal player for a few years now. A long way from that 2015 MVP season, I assure you that. The next one on the list, Eloy Jimenez. And I'm telling you, I didn't have any of these guys on my radar to draft, and that's in most cases, it was because of that very reason. Eloy Jimenez of the Chicago White Sox, left fielder. He's obviously in that category. He has not played a bulk of the season for, I don't know, the last 2 or 3 years, I think. I think that was his rookie year, 2019, I think. And he might have done well in 2020. And after that, he's been on a gurney with a red cross painted on the truck. So if you drafted him in high hopes that this was the new and improved Eloy Jimenez, forget about it. Forget about it. The next one on the list is Travis d'Arnaud, catcher/DH of the Atlanta Braves. And if you've seen the other night what happened to him, he sustained a concussion when Rougned Odor was coming in to home plate on a play. And by the way, he was standing up and ran into Travis d'Arnaud. What a douchebag. Rougned Odor is another one. I just can't handle that guy. his name is Oder to me. And if you know him, he finds his way into controversial situations so often. He reminds me of the dude that was playing last for the Dodgers and was always, he's like the Terrell Owens of baseball. Just seemed like there were more trouble than there were. Very disruptive players. And Brugnet, you just have to go back and look at it maybe on YouTube or some feed. And I think it was it Saturday night's game? I think it was, or Friday night. And he's running into home base. I mean, he wasn't even trying to go into the plate sliding or anything. And he just co-cocks, takes out Travis Darno, who's a pretty tough guy. But anyway, I'm not sure right now how many days he'll be out, what the length of his or whether the IL stint will actually happen. There is some good news on the injury. The Broke Dick report is that Garrett Whitlock is starting for the Boston Red Sox in their game on Tuesday, and he is only 34% owned. He would be if he's still available in your league, he would be a good pickup. Justin Verlander is, at least by reports from the team, the New York Mets, is that they still anticipate him coming back at the end of this month. So we'll be looking for that and in anticipation of Justin Verlander coming back and being the oldest fucker in recent memory trying to pitch. But what a great season he had last year. So it's starting off a little rocky this year, and then when you get his age and Max Scherzer's age, you gotta start wondering about when injuries really cut into significant playing time for these guys. Hopefully he'll get back and be ready to play, and we'll be able to enjoy watching a future Hall of Famer pitch. And last but not least is Daniel Bard, a relief pitcher, i.e. closer for the Colorado Rockies, that left on a medical condition with respect to anxiety. And he had a bullpen session today, Sunday, April 9th. And that's very promising for Daniel Bard. So we look forward to seeing him back. He had a great year last year as a closer for the Rockies. I think he had over 30 saves and just had a great year. So we wish the best to him and look forward to welcoming him back to the major league soon and on taking the bump and retaking his closer role. I'm going to talk real quick about in-season strategies. The one thing I talked about last week was I talked about the tracking your categories. In your category, your 5x5 or whatever category competition you're in. But with the Yahoo category scoring, I introduced a form, like a spreadsheet form, that I use to track each week's category results, so I can see those trends and whether, where it makes it a numerical and easy overview to look at and see where you're having weaknesses. And that data becomes more effective as the year goes on, but you track it each week. And as it builds a clearer picture of how well your team's performing in each category that you're performing in, which helps you make roster move decisions, So go back to that session if you didn't catch it, and you can see the actual form. You can get the form and pull it off our website at www.badazzsports.com, and that's BadAzz with 2 Z's. BadAzzsports.com. Go there and you can see that form. You can copy it or make one of your own in that same light or fix it to your standards, but I'm a big believer in that and tracking your category scoring throughout the year to help you make decisions. there are obviously the waiver wire has been running full force all week. And if you're in a league that does daily waivers, then there's probably a lot of busy. You can probably look in your leagues and see that it's pretty doggone busy with respect to pickups. I will tell you, if you are, I'm going to break away for those of you on audio from my webcam screen and go to the Yahoo Fantasy site again. And what I'm going to show you is some things on the waiver wire to look at, and how you can look at certain data certain ways and make it a little easier in your research, I think, or maybe with your strategy. So we're going to break away from the webcam screen. And we are going to pull up our Yahoo screen. Now, oh, there we go. Here we are. Beautiful. Okay. So we'll go to the waiver. Player. You go to the header to the top where it says players, and then click on player list, and that's going to pull up your list of people that are available as a free agent or is on a waiver hold for a couple days, and that'll be in parentheses where it says roster status, and that means you can't pick them up until that date where you can put in the waiver, but that decision on who gets that player won't be made until that date. And in this case, you see April 10th everywhere. It'll only be longer than April 10th if somebody puts somebody on waivers, like drops them, and then they'll go onto a waiver period from the day they're dropped. But what I wanted to show you on this is how you can filter your waiver search, and you can look for people. And it may be late to do this now, but I'll show you in case it is. Where it says at the top or above the player pool here that you see, for those looking on video, you'll see the player pool of available players that you could pick up. You can filter that with these groups right here, these boxes above the list where it says status, all available players. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change it from all available players to available IL eligible. And this is batters, and I'm going to click filter. What that's going to do, it's going to bring up players that are on the IL. And why I bring that up is you should look on that and see in your league if any players that are playing good or have the prospectus of playing good this year and contributing to your fantasy baseball team. You may want to pick these guys, one or more of these guys up off of while they're on the IL, add them to your team, and put them on your IL list. Now, many leagues you cannot pick up a person off the waiver wire that's on the IL and directly add him to your roster. And what I mean by that is, even if you have or let me backtrack. If you have an empty roster spot, then when you add that IL player, he's going to be in he's going to be in that active roster spot. So what you have to do is once you get the player and he's added to your roster, then you just simply transfer him to from your active roster slot to the IL, and then pick up another player from the waiver wire because you freed that open roster slot up again. In cases where your roster is completely full already, to pick up someone on the IL, the injured list, you'll have to drop someone. Now, you may be able to drop that person, pick up that person on the IL, the next day transfer them to from an active roster slot to the IL, and maybe that player's still available that following day. But you certainly leave that player out there hanging to be picked up. So, consider that before you drop somebody for someone that is on the injured list. You want to definitely consider what your move will be with respect to dropping a player. And we got players and I'll just name some that are out there on the waiver wire that you could do this with that are potential help to your team. Joey Votto, first baseman of Cincinnati. He's out there on the injured list. Jared Walsh of the Los Angeles Angels, not sure the status. He's coming back from a pretty significant injury, so I'm not sure if we're gonna anticipate him coming back this year, but I guess it is possible. Harrison Bader, he's on the 10-day IL. If that player's of interest to you, you might put him on the IL and just let him sit there. You don't lose anything once you transfer them to the IL. They just sit there until they're either active or the season's over, or you, for some reason, just drop them off your roster. Well, you might drop an IL player off your roster because you have all 4 of your IL slots full. That's where you would have to make a decision on that as well. Gavin Lux, he's on the 60-day. I think he's out for the year, though, so that's Brendan Rodgers, he's on the 60-day. Trevor Story, 60-day. I don't know if he's coming back this year. Michael Brantley's on the 10-day. He may be of interest to you on the waiver wire. Josh Donaldson, as we spoke about earlier, he's on the list. David Dahl, who kind of got off to a little bit of a decent start in a good lineup with San Diego, and he's often injured and looks like he's injured again. And at the top of the list, somebody recently went on the IL, Jose Siri, who was really playing at a high level. His Yahoo baseball rank currently is 36, and he went on the IL. So if he is only rostered in 17% of leagues, so if you need an outfielder in your league, an outfielder, as you know, is not the prettiest position to fill your team with. I mean, he's out there, and he's on a short-term IL. You could put him on there and wait and see what happens with him. So, again, in my league, like as it is with most or all the standard leagues, is they allow you 6 moves in a week of competition. So that's all you get. You can make six waiver transactions where you pick up people during the week, and that's usually plenty. I mean, until you get towards the end of the season in the playoffs, it might seem like it's not enough, but definitely early on there through the season, it's generally enough, more than enough to get on through. Okay, so that just about does it tonight for our live podcast, our live stream on YouTube. Keep in mind that you can connect with us on Twitter. My handle is roto_Rudy. That's ROTO_Rudy. Say hi to me. Ask if you got a question out there about what. Here I am. Hey, everybody. You got a question out there about fantasy baseball, in particular your team, certain moves, drops, ads, prospects. Send those questions my way. You can get on Twitter and shoot them to me. I'm also on Facebook at BadAzz Fantasy Baseball. That's BadAzz with 2 Z's. Fantasy Baseball on Facebook. You can do the same thing. Shoot me a message. Ask me a question. Be glad to help you. Folks that want to listen on audio out there, you can catch me on Spotify and Apple Podcast. And that's the spread of my social media empire influence. Hey, thanks for joining in on the show, people out there on the live stream. I appreciate you as always. Have a badass week coming up this week. Next week, we'll start getting into more of players in the coming week that are guys, people look at, people that could break out or people that could help your fantasy baseball team, and they're out there on the waiver wire. So without further ado, remember, if you suck, it's your fault. And don't be a fuckstick out there. Play with fantasy baseball with sportsmanship, like all games and competitions in life. Have fun with it. Go out there and take some risk. Don't overreact on players that are performing poorly at this time. And good luck in week 2. Let me know how your week 1 went as well. I'd be glad to share with you my results of week 1 as well. And without further ado, have a great week. And this is Rudy with the BadAzz Fantasy Baseball Podcast. See you next week.